I'm Isabella, 37 years old, and I never thought my Tuesday morning coffee ritual would include opening divorce papers. My phone dinged with an email from Warren. There he was, smirking with his arm around Jade, his 23-year-old assistant, standing on the deck of our lake house. "The house is mine now," the message taunted beneath the legal documents. My hands didn't even shake as I set down my mug, typed "Are you sure about that?" and blocked his number and email. If you're joining my story from across the country, hit like and subscribe while I pour another cup of coffee and tell you how I outsmarted the man who thought he could leave me with nothing. Warren and I met 12 years ago at a marketing conference in Chicago. I was there representing my advertising firm, focused entirely on networking rather than romance. Warren approached me after my presentation on digital marketing strategies, his confidence immediately catching my attention. 6 feet tall with salt and pepper hair despite being only 35 at the time, he carried himself with the assurance of someone who knew exactly what he wanted in life. "Your analysis of consumer behavior patterns was impressive," he said, extending his business card. "I'd love to discuss potential collaboration over dinner." That dinner turned into 3 hours of conversation that flowed effortlessly. Warren ran a successful investment firm and had the same drive and ambition that fueled my own career. By dessert, we were discussing favorite travel destinations rather than business prospects. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. Looking back, I should have recognized how skillfully he mirrored my interests, creating an illusion of perfect compatibility. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Weekend trips to Manhattan, surprise deliveries of my favorite lilies to my office, thoughtful gifts that showed he was listening when I mentioned something in passing. After just 6 months, Warren proposed during a sunset sailing trip off the California coast. The diamond was flawless, the setting platinum, everything a fairy tale should be. "We're perfect together, Isabella," he whispered as he slipped the ring on my finger. "Together, we'll build an empire." We married at a historic estate in Vermont the following spring. The wedding was elegant but intimate, just 80 guests, excellent wine, and a string quartet playing our favorite classical pieces. My parents, both retired professors, watched with cautious happiness. My father pulled me aside during the reception. "He seems like a go-getter, Isabella. Just make sure you don't get lost in his shadow," he said. Always the protective dad even as I approached 30. I laughed it off. I was successful in my own right, having climbed to creative director at my agency through determination and talent. I couldn't imagine ever losing myself in anyone else's ambitions. The first 3 years were good. We purchased our primary residence in an exclusive neighborhood, a modern 4-bedroom house with floor-to-ceiling windows and a sophisticated security system. Warren insisted on the best of everything: top-of-the-line appliances, designer furniture, artwork from emerging artists who later became famous. I appreciated quality too, but sometimes wondered if we needed quite so many status symbols. The lake house came next. I had inherited money from my grandmother, and we decided to use it as a down payment on a vacation property. The lakefront home was my dream: 3 bedrooms, a wraparound deck, and panoramic views of the water. I spent weekends selecting furniture, designing the space to be a peaceful retreat from our hectic professional lives. "This will be our sanctuary," I told Warren as we toasted with champagne on the deck after closing. "A place for us to reconnect and relax." He smiled and clinked his glass against mine. "And a solid investment property. Lakefront real estate appreciates nicely." That should have been another warning sign, his immediate calculation of financial gain rather than emotional value. But I was still deeply in love and interpreted his pragmatism as smart planning for our future. The subtle red flags accumulated, so gradually I barely noticed them. Warren began critiquing my wardrobe choices before important events. "That dress doesn't project the right image for the wife of a financial executive," he'd say, steering me toward more conservative options. He questioned my late nights at the office during campaign seasons, though he thought nothing of his own 80-hour work weeks. When I received a prestigious industry award, Warren attended the ceremony, but spent most of it networking with potential clients rather than celebrating my achievement. The following day, He suggested I consider stepping back from such demanding work. "You don't need to push yourself so hard anymore," he said. "My income can support us both comfortably." I refused, of course. My career wasn't just about money. It was my passion, my creative outlet, and a core part of my identity. Warren didn't bring it up again directly, but made occasional comments about career women who sacrificed everything for professional success. We decided not to have children, focusing instead on our careers and lifestyle. This was a mutual decision initially, though Warren sometimes made comments at friends' baby showers about how I chose boardrooms over babies. These remarks stung, especially when presented as jokes in public settings where I couldn't respond honestly. By year 7, the distance between us was growing. Warren's business trips became more frequent. He'd return home distracted, checking his phone constantly and offering vague answers about his meetings. I suggested couples therapy after a particularly distant month. "We don't need someone poking around in our private life," he dismissed. "We're just busy. Let's plan a vacation instead." The vacation to Bali was luxurious, but felt like a performance. We took the right photos for social media, ate at exclusive restaurants, and maintained the facade of the perfect power couple. But we were sleeping as far apart as the king-size bed would allow. And meaningful conversations had become rare. I tried everything to save our marriage. Weekend getaways, cooking his favorite meals, initiating intimacy that was increasingly rejected. I even suggested we renovate the lake house together as a bonding project. Warren agreed half-heartedly, then left most decisions to me while continuing his increasingly mysterious business activities. Trust is essential in marriage, he told me when I asked too many questions about a weekend conference that mysteriously left no digital footprint. "Don't you trust me, Isabella?" Somehow, he always managed to make me feel guilty for having perfectly reasonable concerns. Looking back, I can see he was master manipulator, but at the time, I just felt increasingly confused and insecure in my own perceptions. The first concrete evidence came from my credit card statement. A charge at a high-end jewelry store in Boston appeared while Warren was supposedly at a financial summit in Seattle. When I casually mentioned it, his face tightened momentarily before the smooth explanation came. "It was a gift for my assistant's wedding. I should have mentioned it." He kissed my cheek and changed the subject to an upcoming charity gala. His assistant Thomas was indeed getting married, which made the explanation plausible. But something felt off. The amount seemed excessive for an employee gift, even by Warren's generous standards. I started paying closer attention without making it obvious. Late-night text notifications that Warren would instantly silence. Phone calls he would take in the garage or backyard. Weekends with urgent client situations that required his in-person attention while I was left to attend social events alone. The pieces were there, but I kept dismissing them. Not wanting to become the paranoid wife Warren occasionally accused me of being. Then came Natalie's call. My college roommate and still close friend worked for a hospitality group and had been overseeing an event at a downtown hotel. "Isabella, I saw Warren yesterday," she said hesitantly. "He was having dinner with a young woman. Very young. They looked intimate." My stomach dropped, but denial kicked in immediately. "Probably a client. He mentors young entrepreneurs sometimes." "Honey, he was feeding her dessert from his fork and touching her hair," Natalie said gently. "It wasn't professional." I thanked her for telling me but downplayed my concern. After hanging up, I sat in my home office staring at the wall for an hour. That night at dinner, I studied Warren's face as he talked about market projections and golf scores. This familiar stranger across the table, was he really capable of such betrayal? I decided to investigate discreetly. I maintained our normal routine, managing my team at work, attending social functions, keeping our home running smoothly. But I began paying attention to patterns in Warren's absences and creating a timeline of suspicious events. 8 months earlier, Warren had mentioned hiring a new executive assistant after Thomas moved to their West Coast office. Jade Lawson, 23, recent business school graduate. "She's incredibly sharp," Warren had commented, eager to learn the industry from the ground up. I found her LinkedIn profile easily enough. Attractive, blonde, with the polished, professional appearance of someone who knew how to present herself in corporate America. Nothing inappropriate there. But when I scrolled through her Instagram account, I noticed locations that matched Warren's solo business trips too perfectly to be coincidence. When Warren announced he needed to visit our Miami branch office, Jade posted beach sunset photos from South Beach. When he had tax meetings in New York, she shared Times Square selfies. Each time, they were never in the same photo. But the timing and locations aligned perfectly. I confronted him after finding a receipt for 2 theater tickets in his jacket pocket. Is there something going on with you and Jade? Warren's face registered shock before smoothing into indignation. Are you serious? She's practically a child. And my employee. That's completely inappropriate and honestly offensive that you would suggest it. He turned it around on me, questioning why I was snooping through his pockets and suggesting I might benefit from therapy for my trust issues. By the end of the conversation, I was apologizing to him while he magnanimously forgave my unfounded accusations. 2 weeks later, Warren announced he needed to spend a week at our lake house alone. The Jefferson account needs my complete focus without distractions. The quiet will help me concentrate. The Jefferson account was indeed important. A potential 8-figure client Warren had been courting for months. His explanation made sense. Yet, as I helped him pack, I noticed he included his expensive cologne and more dress shirts than necessary for a week of isolation and work. Planning some dinner meetings up there? I asked casually. Maybe 1 or 2. Better to be prepared, he replied without meeting my eyes. The morning after he left, I woke to an email notification. Still half asleep, I opened it expecting the usual work correspondence. Instead, I found myself looking at legal documents titled Petition for Divorce and a photo that stopped my heart. Warren and Jade, champagne glasses raised, standing on our lake house deck with the sunset casting a golden glow on their smiling faces. Her hand rested possessively on his chest. A diamond tennis bracelet, undoubtedly the Boston jewelry purchase, glinting on her wrist. Below the photo, Warren had written, "The house is mine now. I've had the deed transferred through my attorney. Time to start fresh without dead weight holding me back." The crushing pain was immediate and physical, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it couldn't beat properly. 10 years of marriage, of building a life together, reduced to a gloating email and cruel photo. The disrespect was so complete it momentarily took my breath away. As the initial shock subsided, something else rose to take its place. A cold, clear anger that brought unexpected focus. Warren thought I would collapse, beg, plead. He expected emotional chaos that would give him the upper hand in whatever came next. Instead, I took a deep breath, finished my coffee, and typed 6 words that would change everything. Are you sure about that? We'll see. Then I blocked his number, his email, and began making calls that would ultimately save me from his elaborate deception. My first call was to Amanda Hamilton, my best friend since law school and now a formidable divorce attorney. I'd attended her graduation, cheered when she made partner, and been maid of honor at her wedding. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was Amanda. That arrogant, cheating bastard. She said after I explained the situation. Isabella, listen carefully. Don't contact him. Don't respond to anything else he sends. And whatever you do, don't leave your house. He claims he's already transferred the lake house deed, I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. Amanda's laugh had an edge to it. That's not how real estate transfers work, especially for marital property. And didn't you use your inheritance for the down payment? Meet me at my office in an hour. Bring any financial documents you can easily access. I spent the next 45 minutes gathering papers, our marriage certificate, property deeds, recent bank statements, tax returns. Then I changed into a charcoal gray suit, applied makeup with steady hands, and drove to Amanda's downtown office with the calm of someone who had moved beyond shock into strategic action. Amanda introduced me to Gabriela Santos, her firm's top divorce attorney. Gabriella had the focused intensity of a surgeon, asking precise questions and taking detailed notes about our marriage, finances, and Warren's behavior. "Based on what you've told me, your husband has likely been planning this for some time," Gabriella said. "The good news is that he seems to have made several critical legal mistakes, starting with his ridiculous claim about the lake house deed. She explained that my inheritance used for the down payment would likely be considered separate property even in our communal property state. Furthermore, any attempt to transfer the deed without my signature constituted fraud. What we need now is evidence," Gabriella continued. "Evidence of infidelity won't impact property division much in this state, but it can influence a judge if there's also evidence of financial misconduct, which I strongly suspect given his actions." Over the next 2 weeks, I became an investigator in my own marriage. I hired a financial forensic specialist recommended by Gabriella who discovered Warren had been siphoning money into hidden accounts for nearly 2 years, small amounts that wouldn't immediately raise red flags, but substantial in total. I installed security cameras at our main residence, documented every asset from artwork to wine collections, and secured my personal valuables and documents in a safe deposit box Amanda helped me establish. Meanwhile, Warren's messages escalated from gloating to confusion to anger as my silence continued. He tried emailing from different accounts, calling from unknown numbers, even having business associates casually check on me. I maintained complete radio silence while methodically building my case. The financial trail revealed Warren's careful planning. He had been liquidating investments, underreporting income on tax returns we jointly filed, and hiding assets in anticipation of divorce. He'd even created a shell company that was paying consulting fees to an account only he controlled. "This is actually helpful for us," Gabriella explained during our strategy session. "Financial fraud during marriage is taken very seriously by family court judges. He's created a paper trail of deception that will undermine his credibility." I discovered Warren had taken Jade on trips charged to our joint business account, purchased jewelry using our family credit card, and even put a down payment on a condo listing her as co-owner, all while we were still legally married. The most shocking discovery came when we found documentation that Warren had attempted to use the lake house as collateral for a business loan without my knowledge, forging my signature on the application. The loan had been rejected due to a diligent loan officer noticing discrepancies in the paperwork, but the attempt itself was damning evidence of Warren's dishonesty. Each revelation hurt, reopening the wound of betrayal, but each also strengthened my resolve and legal position. I worked closely with Gabriella to document everything meticulously, creating a comprehensive dossier of Warren's deceptions. "He thinks you're just going to fall apart," Amanda said during a strategy dinner at her home, safely away from potential prying eyes. "Men like Warren always underestimate women like you, Isabella. They mistake our emotional intelligence for weakness." I managed a small smile. "He once told me my feminine intuition was cute but no match for data-driven decisions." "Well, your intuition plus our data is about to destroy his carefully constructed plans," Gabriella replied, raising her wine glass in a toast. "To justice." As my legal team prepared for the inevitable confrontation, I focused on practical matters. I changed the locks on our primary residence with documentation from my attorney stating it was for security purposes during ongoing divorce proceedings. I moved funds from joint accounts into protected escrow accounts as advised by counsel. I notified our joint financial institutions of potential unauthorized activity. All the while, Warren's messages to mutual friends and business associates painted me as unstable, vindictive, possibly even mentally ill. "I'm worried about Isabella," he told our social circle. "She's not taking our separation well." The narrative was clear. He was the reasonable one, concerned about his poor, fragile soon-to-be ex-wife who couldn't handle the end of their marriage. Little did he know I was handling it with more strategic precision than he could have imagined, preparing for a confrontation that would change everything. Despite my outward composure and methodical approach to the legal battle ahead, when the doors closed and I was alone, the pain was overwhelming. The first night after receiving Warren's email, I curled on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, sobbing until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. 10 years of memories assaulted me in waves. Our wedding day, when Warren had tears in his eyes as I walked down the aisle. Celebrating my 30th birthday in Paris. Nursing him through pneumonia 3 winters ago, worried sick as his fever spiked. The simple Sunday mornings reading newspapers and drinking coffee on our patio. Had it all been a performance? Were there genuine moments of love amidst the deception? My sister Caroline flew in from Seattle, taking emergency leave from her hospital job to stay with me during that first brutal week. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she said, holding me as another crying jag hit after a particularly difficult meeting with the financial investigator. "It's okay to fall apart a little." "I can't," I whispered. "If I truly let go, I might not be able to pull myself back together. And I need to be focused right now." Caroline helped establish routines to keep me functioning: morning walks, regular meals, evening check-ins where I could vent freely without judgment. She screened calls from well-meaning friends and fielded questions from concerned colleagues who'd heard rumors about my marriage. Sleep became elusive. I would jolt awake at the slightest sound, heart racing, momentarily confused about why Warren wasn't beside me. Other nights, anxiety attacks would strike without warning, chest tightening, breathing shallow, convinced I was having a heart attack until the symptoms gradually subsided. At Caroline's insistence, I started seeing Dr. Eleanor Weber, a therapist specializing in trauma and betrayal. Our first session was mainly me staring at the wall, unable to articulate the magnitude of what I was feeling. By our third meeting, the words finally came. "I don't know who I was married to," I confessed. 10 years with someone who could do this so callously, so calculated. What does that say about my judgment? About me? Dr. Weber helped me understand I was experiencing not just the end of a marriage, but a profound identity crisis. "Your understanding of your past is being rewritten," she explained. "That's disorienting and deeply painful, but it doesn't reflect on your worth or intelligence." We worked through exercises to separate my self-worth from Warren's betrayal, to acknowledge the grief without being consumed by it. "You're mourning multiple losses," she pointed out. "The partner you thought you had, the future you planned, your sense of security, and even parts of your past that now feel tainted." The stages of grief didn't progress linearly. I would feel accepting and strong one day, then be blindsided by rage the next. Finding a receipt from a restaurant where we'd celebrated our anniversary, discovering Warren had taken Jade there on dates, sent me into a fury that had me throwing his remaining clothes into the Arden and dousing them with plant fertilizer. "Good," Amanda said when I confessed this momentary lapse in dignity. "Get it out of your system here with me, rather than where it could impact your case." Surprisingly, the work became therapeutic. Every document uncovered, every deception mapped out, helped me see Warren more clearly. The idealized husband in my memory was being replaced by the reality of who he truly was, and while painful, this clarity was necessary for healing. I began rediscovering parts of myself that had gradually disappeared during our marriage. I reconnected with college friends Warren had subtly discouraged me from maintaining relationships with. I signed up for a photography class I'd always wanted to take, but had postponed because Warren thought it was amateurish. Caroline returned to Seattle after 2 weeks, but our daily video calls continued. My friend circle tightened to a fiercely loyal core who checked in regularly and provided distraction when the legal process became too overwhelming. "Remember when we backpacked through Thailand before you met Warren?" My friend Stephanie reminisced during a support dinner at her house. "You were fearless then. You still are." Gradually, I began sleeping through most nights. The anxiety attacks became less frequent. I started a journal documenting not just my emotional journey, but my personal rediscoveries, likes, dislikes, dreams, and plans that had nothing to do with Warren or our marriage. 6 weeks after the email, as my friends and I now called it, I had a breakthrough moment. I was driving home from a meeting with Gabriella when our wedding song came on the radio. Previously, this would have triggered tears or anger. Instead, I felt a curious detachment, as if the song belonged to characters in a movie I'd watched long ago. I changed the station without emotional upheaval and realized I was beginning to separate myself from the marriage that had defined me for so long. That evening, I took a significant step in reclaiming my narrative. I deleted the Isabella Matthews social media accounts tied to Warren's last name and created new ones using my maiden name, Isabella Foster. The simple act of seeing my original name on the screen felt like reconnecting with a part of myself I'd set aside. When Dr. Weber asked what I wanted most from this process beyond legal justice, I surprised myself with my answer. I want to look in the mirror and recognize myself again, I said. Not as Warren's wife or Warren's ex-wife, but just as Isabella. The path to that self-recognition was neither straight nor easy. There were still days when grief blindsided me, when rage made my hands shake, when fear about the future kept me awake. But increasingly, there were also moments of genuine peace, of excitement about possibilities that had nothing to do with Warren Matthews or the life we'd shared. You're doing the hardest thing possible, Dr. Weber told me during a particularly difficult session. You're rebuilding your sense of self while in the middle of emotional trauma. Most people can't do these things simultaneously. I wasn't sure if I could either, but I knew I had no choice but to try. Warren had taken enough from me. I refused to let him take my future too. After 53 days of silence, Warren returned to our primary residence unannounced. I was working in my home office when the security system alerted me to someone attempting to use a key at the front door. The newly installed camera showed Warren, face flushed with anger, repeatedly trying his key in the changed locks. I texted Amanda and Gabriella immediately. He's here. Their response was immediate. Do not open the door. We're on our way. Security team dispatched. Warren progressed from key attempts to pounding on the door, his voice carrying through the house. Isabella, open the damn door. This is my house too. I remained in my office, heart pounding but resolve firm. The security team Gabriella had recommended arrived within minutes, positioning themselves discreetly but visibly on the property. Warren's reaction to their presence was captured perfectly on the security cameras: confusion, then outrage, then the dawning realization that his unannounced arrival wasn't proceeding as planned. When Amanda and Gabriella arrived 30 minutes later, they approached Warren in the driveway. The conversation was brief, ending with Warren reluctantly agreeing to a formal meeting at Gabriella's office the following day, with both legal teams present. He's furious, Amanda reported by phone afterward, but also completely off balance. He came expecting to intimidate you into submission and found a security team and legal representation instead. The formal meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock the next day. I spent the morning with my legal team reviewing our strategy and preparing mentally for seeing Warren face-to-face for the first time since his betrayal. Remember, he'll try to provoke an emotional response, Gabriella coached. Any display of anger, hurt, or desperation will be used against you. Channel your inner CEO, professional, composed, and focus solely on business outcomes. I chose my outfit carefully. A navy blue suit that projected authority without being aggressive, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the polished, composed woman staring back at me. She looked nothing like the devastated wife who had curled up sobbing on the bathroom floor weeks earlier. Warren was already seated in the conference room when we arrived, flanked by his attorney Jeffrey Blackwell, a divorce lawyer known for aggressive tactics and high-profile settlements favoring wealthy male clients. Warren's appearance shocked me momentarily. He looked thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and his usually impeccable suit slightly rumpled. His expression when I entered was equally surprised. He had clearly expected the emotional wreck he'd been describing to our social circle. Instead, he faced a composed, professional woman accompanied by 2 of the city's most formidable attorneys. Let's get straight to business, Gabriella began, laying out a folder of documents. We're here to discuss the division of assets and terms of divorce between Isabella Foster and Warren Matthews. Warren's eyes narrowed at my maiden name. It was a small but significant declaration of independence. Jeffrey Blackwell attempted to take control of the meeting immediately. My client has been extremely generous in his initial settlement offer, considering Mrs. Matthews' emotional instability and refusal to communicate like a reasonable adult. Gabriella's smile was razor-sharp. We'll be countering with our own proposal based on full financial disclosure, which your client has thus far failed to provide. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Warren's position. Gabriella presented evidence of the hidden accounts, the misappropriated funds, the forged documents, and the fraudulent loan application. With each revelation, Warren's face grew paler and his attorney's expression more concerned. "These are serious allegations," Blackwell said, attempting to maintain his composure. "They're not allegations," Amanda replied calmly. "They're documented facts. Facts that constitute financial fraud, which, as you know, significantly impacts how a judge will view the division of assets." When Gabriella presented the evidence about the lake house, my inheritance for the down payment, Warren's failed attempt to use it as loan collateral without my knowledge, and his fraudulent claim about transferring the deed, Warren finally broke his silence. "That house is mine. I made every other payment after the down payment. I managed the property. I handled the renovations." It was the first crack in his facade, and Gabriella exploited it immediately. "With joint funds, Mr. Matthews. While making investment decisions that benefited you alone. While planning to leave your wife without her fair share of marital assets." The meeting continued for 3 grueling hours. Just as we were wrapping up, the conference room door opened and Jade appeared, clearly having been waiting somewhere in the building. "Is it done yet? We have dinner reservations at 7. She announced, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the tension in the room. Warren's face flushed with embarrassment or anger, possibly both. "Not now, Jade." Her presence was actually a gift to our side. The visual of the young girlfriend interrupting serious divorce proceedings reinforced every point we'd made about Warren's character and judgment. As we were gathering our documents, Warren attempted one last power play. "Isabella, this could all be much simpler. Drop the investigation, accept my original offer, and we can end this civilly." I met his eyes directly for the first time. "You didn't want civil when you sent divorce papers with a taunting photo. You didn't want civil when you hid assets and lied about property. You wanted to leave me with nothing while you started fresh with someone half my age. That opportunity is gone." His attorney pulled him aside for an urgent whispered conversation. I could see the shift in Warren's demeanor as Blackwell presumably explained just how precarious his legal position had become. As we left the meeting, Amanda squeezed my hand. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." That evening, alone in my house, I finally allowed myself to process the day's events. Seeing Warren had been difficult, but also strangely anticlimactic. The man I'd built up in my mind as this powerful adversary had seemed smaller somehow, less impressive, his manipulation tactics transparent now that I could see them clearly. Warren's attempts to contact me continued over the following days, his approach shifting from demands to bargaining to something approaching desperation. His attorney formally requested mediation rather than proceeding to court, a clear sign they recognized the weakness of their position. "They're running scared," Gabriella confirmed during our next meeting. "They know how bad this will look before a judge. Now we negotiate from strength." The formal divorce proceedings began with a flurry of legal filings. Warren's team attempted to challenge our evidence, claiming business necessity for the separate accounts and suggesting I had been aware of and approved all financial decisions. These claims fell apart under scrutiny, particularly when we produced emails where I had specifically questioned certain transactions and received misleading responses. Judge Patricia Winters, a no-nonsense veteran of the family court system, saw through Warren's attempts to delay and obfuscate. During our first court appearance, she fixed Warren with a stern look after his attorney attempted to characterize the hidden accounts as standard business practice. "Mr. Matthews, this court takes a very dim view of financial non-disclosure during marriage, particularly when there appears to be a pattern of deliberate concealment," she stated firmly. "I suggest your counsel advise you on the potential consequences of continuing this approach." The warning was clear, and Warren's strategy shifted accordingly. His next move was attempting to portray me as a neglectful wife who had prioritized career over marriage, somehow justifying his infidelity and financial misconduct. This narrative gained little traction, especially when we presented evidence of my consistent attempts to strengthen our relationship, contrasted with his pattern of deception. As the proceedings continued, Warren's professional reputation began suffering. Word spread through our business circles about his conduct, and several long-standing clients quietly moved their accounts to competitors. The investment firm he'd built so carefully began showing signs of instability as partners and senior staff questioned his judgment. Jade, who had been a constant presence during the early hearings, became increasingly scarce as Warren's financial and professional prospects dimmed. By the third month of proceedings, she had stopped attending court altogether. I learned through mutual connections that she had accepted a position with a rival investment firm, a move Warren reportedly viewed as the ultimate betrayal. "She's been interviewing with your competitors for weeks," Amanda informed me after hearing through her network. Apparently, she's been quite forthcoming about Warren's business practices during these interviews. The irony wasn't lost on me. The young woman he'd chosen over me was now using information gained during their affair to advance her own career at his expense. Meanwhile, the forensic financial investigation continued revealing layers of Warren's deception. Beyond the accounts and assets we'd already uncovered, we discovered he had been engaging in questionable investment practices that bordered on ethical violations. While not directly relevant to our divorce proceedings, this information provided additional leverage in negotiations. During a particularly tense mediation session 4 months into the process, Warren's attorney proposed a settlement that would have given me the primary residence and a financial package amounting to roughly 30% of our marital assets, still significantly less than what I was legally entitled to receive. "This is a generous offer considering the circumstances," Blackwell insisted. "My client is prepared to conclude this matter amicably." Gabriella didn't even bother looking at the proposal. "We'll be adhering to our original position. Equal division of all marital assets, with adjustments for the inherited funds used for the lake house and compensation for the documented financial misconduct." Warren slammed his hand on the table. "This is extortion. You've already damaged my business, my reputation. What more do you want?" I spoke directly to him for only the second time since our separation. "I want what I'm legally entitled to, Warren. Nothing more, nothing less. You chose to end our marriage, but you don't get to dictate the terms after spending years hiding assets and planning your exit." The mediation ended without resolution, sending us back to court for the judge's determination. 2 weeks later, Judge Winters issued her ruling. The lake house was awarded to me based on the inheritance used for its purchase, along with the primary residence and exactly 50% of all marital assets, including those Warren had attempted to hide. Additionally, Warren was ordered to pay my legal fees based on his demonstrated pattern of financial concealment necessitating extraordinary investigation. When the ruling was announced, Warren sat motionless beside his attorney, face drained of color. He had gambled everything on his ability to manipulate the system as he had manipulated me, and he had lost comprehensively. His final attempt came in the form of an appeal, claiming the judge had been biased against him and the financial division was inequitable. The appeal was summarily rejected, with the appellate judge noting the overwhelming evidence of systematic financial misconduct justifying the original ruling. On a crisp fall morning, almost exactly 1 year after Warren's email with the divorce papers, I sat in Gabriella's office and signed the final divorce decree. The document that officially ended my 10-year marriage was surprisingly brief, just a few pages of legal language that dissolved the relationship that had defined my 30s. "How do you feel?" Amanda asked as we left the courthouse. I considered the question carefully. Hollow, relieved, exhausted, proud, all of the above. The legal victory felt necessary but insufficient. I had fought for and received fair treatment under the law, but no court could restore the years spent with someone who had been planning my disposal while sharing my bed. No judge could erase the memories or heal the wound of such calculated betrayal. As we walked to our cars, Amanda stopped me with a hand on my arm. "You know what happens now, right?" "What's that?" I asked. "The hard part is over. Now you get to decide who you want to be next." 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I drove to the lake house alone. It was my first visit since Warren's betrayal, and I had deliberately waited until all legal matters were completely resolved. The familiar winding road leading to the property brought a mixture of emotions: nostalgia, grief, anger, but also a curious sense of possibility. The house itself was exactly as I remembered, yet entirely different. The physical structure remained unchanged, but the space felt altered by what had transpired within its walls. Standing on the deck where Warren and Jade had posed for their taunting photo, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. Then I did something symbolic. I rearranged the furniture. The Adirondack chairs Warren had positioned for the perfect view were moved to create a conversation circle instead. The massive dining table he had insisted upon was replaced with something smaller, more intimate, that I ordered the following week. Small changes that represented a larger reclamation. Over the next 6 months, I transformed the lake house into a space that reflected me rather than us. Fresh paint in colors Warren had dismissed as too feminine. Artwork from local artists I admired rather than the investment pieces Warren had selected for potential appreciation value. A room dedicated to photography as I pursued my rediscovered passion. My first weekend gathering at the newly renovated lake house included Caroline, Amanda, Natalie, and other friends who had been my bedrock during the divorce. We cooked together, drank wine on the deck, and stayed up late sharing stories and laughter. The house that had briefly been a symbol of betrayal was being reconsecrated as a place of connection and joy. "I never liked the way Warren decorated this place anyway," Caroline commented, curled up on one of the new window seats I'd had built. "It always felt like a furniture showroom, not a home." I realized she was right. Like so many aspects of my marriage, the lake house had reflected Warren's preferences and priorities rather than a true blending of our tastes. The painful process of divorce had freed me to discover what I actually wanted, not just what I had accommodated. Professionally, I continued thriving. The focus and determination that had helped me through the legal battle translated well to my career. I was promoted to Executive Creative Director, a position that allowed me to mentor younger women in the industry. Without realizing it, I began sharing wisdom gained from my personal experience. "Always maintain your financial independence," I told Emma, a promising young designer worried about moving in with her boyfriend. "Joint accounts are fine for shared expenses, but keep your own savings, your own credit, your own financial identity." Dating again happened gradually and on my own terms. The first few attempts were awkward. I had been out of the dating pool for over a decade, and everything had changed. Dating apps, new relationship terminology, different expectations. I approached it with the same methodical curiosity I had applied to rebuilding other areas of my life. Martin, a landscape architect I met through a mutual friend, became my first serious relationship post-divorce. He was patient with my trust issues, transparent about his own past, and refreshingly straightforward in his communication. We moved slowly, both appreciating the value of building something solid rather than rushing toward commitment. "I like that you know exactly who you are," he told me after we had been dating for 6 months. "There's no guesswork with you." That clarity had been hard-won. Through continued therapy with Dr. Weber and consistent self-reflection, I had developed a stronger sense of my own boundaries, values, and needs. I had learned to recognize red flags rather than rationalize them, to trust my instincts rather than doubt them. Almost unintentionally, I became someone others sought out for advice about difficult relationships and divorces. A colleague going through a separation asked if we could talk over coffee. A neighbor dealing with financial deception in her marriage reached out for guidance. Each conversation reinforced my own healing while allowing me to transform pain into something constructive. This led to my involvement with a divorce support group, initially as a participant and eventually as a co-facilitator. Sharing my story in a room of women experiencing similar betrayals was both therapeutic and purposeful. "You will get through this," I could tell them with absolute certainty. And you might even discover yourself in the process. 14 months after our divorce was finalized, Warren sent an email. It had been forwarded through Gabriella's office as per our no direct contact agreement. The message was surprisingly humble, acknowledging his wrongdoing, expressing regret for the pain he had caused, even admitting that the relationship with Jade had ended badly. I lost everything that actually mattered because I couldn't recognize its value, he wrote. I know an apology is inadequate, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. I read the email twice, waiting for the emotional impact that never came. There was no satisfaction, no vindication, no residual anger. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this message no longer held power over me. I closed the email without responding and went about my day, realizing that true closure had nothing to do with Warren's recognition of his mistakes. On the 1-year anniversary of signing my divorce papers, I hosted a freedom celebration at the lake house. Friends and family gathered to mark not the end of my marriage, but the beginning of my rebuilt life. As sunset painted the lake in gold and crimson, we raised glasses in a toast to losing what I thought I wanted, I said, and finding what I actually needed. Later that evening, standing alone on the deck watching the stars emerge, I felt something I had once thought impossible in the aftermath of such betrayal: genuine happiness. Not the performative contentment of my marriage's latter years, but an authentic joy born of self-knowledge and hard-won wisdom. The journey from that Tuesday morning coffee with its devastating email to this moment of peace had been brutal, complex, and ultimately transformative. I had been broken open by betrayal, but what rushed in to fill the cracks wasn't just pain. It was also light, truth, and eventually, healing. If you've been through something similar or are going through it now, remember that the story doesn't end with betrayal. The most important chapters come after, when you decide how to write the rest of your life. Have you ever had to completely rebuild after a relationship ended? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the most painful endings can lead to beautiful new beginnings. Thank you for being part of my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity on yours.